If you've ever ignored your gut instinct for far too long, get ready. This one's going to hit deep. The bed was cold. Not the kind of cold that means she'd just stepped out for a minute. No, this was the kind of cold that meant no one had touched it all night. And there was glitter on the pillow. Not mine. Not from anything in our house. Not from any of her belongings. Just glitter. Out of place. Suspicious. And hanging in the air was the faint, unmistakable trace of a citrusy cologne. One I'd never worn, never owned, never even liked. It lingered like a cruel punchline. I didn't ask her to explain. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her of anything. Instead, I did what I always did. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs, a slice of toast slightly burnt at the edges, and a glass of orange juice, because she's always hated coffee in the morning. I even folded her sweater neatly over the kitchen chair, like some pathetic, devoted fool still pretending we were playing house. Then I left it all there, untouched, and walked outside. I got into the car and sat for 2 full hours. Didn't drive anywhere, just sat. Watched the windshield fog up from my breath, while her last text replayed in my mind like a broken record. Gone this weekend. Please respect this. I need something different. Different. That single word scraped against my insides like sandpaper. And the worst part? She'd said it so calmly, so casually, like she was swapping out shampoo or trying a new brand of toothpaste, not sneaking off to be with another man. All weekend, I convinced myself she was probably at some quiet cabin in the woods, maybe journaling, maybe having one of her usual dramatic identity shifts, like the time she went vegan for 11 days, or declared herself a tarot coach for 2 weeks straight. I was used to her whims, her phases. But this time, this wasn't a phase. This was something else entirely. On Sunday night, I opened the shared calendar on her tablet, the one she always forgot to switch to private. And there it was, plain as day. Weekend trip. Derek. 3 emojis, that was all, and a name I'd never seen before. Derek. I clicked on the contact. There were photos. Blurry, yes, but not blurry enough. Her face pressed too close to his, her hand resting casually in his lap. A mirror selfie taken in a hotel room that absolutely wasn't ours. I dropped the tablet. Not out of rage, just because my hand wouldn't stop trembling. She came back Monday morning, all smiles. Hair perfectly curled, fresh manicure, carrying her shoes in one hand, like she'd just strolled along a beach instead of committing the ultimate betrayal. She had no idea what I'd done while she was gone, because while she was out exploring, I was making my own quiet, irreversible decision. And by the time she walked through that front door, I was already gone, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. The funny thing, she didn't even knock. She walked in like it was any ordinary Monday, tossed her keys into the bowl, hummed some off-key tune, and started unpacking a bag that hadn't even been zipped properly. A flash of red lace peeked out, a bra I'd never seen before. She caught me looking, gave a nervous little smile, and said, "I treated myself." Treated herself. I nodded. Not because I understood, but because I knew if I opened my mouth, my voice would crack. I watched her walk barefoot across the hardwood floor we'd picked out together 2 years ago. She stepped right over the note I'd left on the counter, the one that simply read, "I know." She never even saw it. Instead, she launched into a story about a soul bath she'd taken at some hot spring, how liberating it felt to disconnect from her phone and exist in the moment. At 10 a.m., she poured herself a glass of wine, leaned against the fridge, and spun tales about mystical energy, chakras, and personal alignment. I stared at her like she was a stranger, and in that moment, she was. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that her silence had screamed louder than any confession ever could. I wanted to beg her to say his name, to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. But she just kept smiling, proud of herself, as if I should be applauding her little journey. So I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. I just walked out with the bag I'd quietly packed the night before, carrying only what mattered: my ID, a few changes of clothes, my grandfather's watch, and the flash drive. I had no plan. I just drove until I saw a cheap motel with a flickering vacancy sign that looked like it hadn't been replaced since the 90s. I paid for 2 nights in cash. The bed was rock hard. The room reeked of bleach. The lampshade had a jagged crack running through it. But I slept better than I had in months. That night, I plugged in the flash drive again, just to be absolutely sure I hadn't imagined it all. I hadn't. There it was, a folder labeled Weekends Only. Inside, dozens of photos, some time-stamped, some blurred, some showing her wrapped in his hoodie. One showed her wearing the necklace I'd given her on our anniversary last year, tangled in his sheets, laughing like she hadn't a care in the world. And then there was the video. It took me 3 hours just to work up the courage to press play. I don't know what I expected to see, maybe a harmless clip, a misunderstanding, an old memory, a joke, something I could twist into denial and crawl back into. But the moment it started, her voice filled the room, breathless, laughing, whispering words I'd only ever heard her say to me in the dark. Don't stop. I slammed the laptop shut like it had burned me. Couldn't breathe. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I'd vomit. I stood in the center of that dingy, musty motel room, staring blankly at the peeling wallpaper, while my brain tried and failed to pretend I hadn't just heard my wife give herself to someone else. I wanted to scream. All that came out was a single, broken whisper. Why? Not, why him? Not, why now? Just, why? I sank to the floor and stayed there for hours. Not because it was comfortable, but because standing required energy I no longer had. Every thought spiraled inward. Was I not enough? Was I boring? Did she hate me this whole time? Was I just a placeholder until she found someone better? My phone buzzed once. Her name lit up the screen. I didn't open the message. Couldn't. Not after what I'd heard. I powered the phone off completely and tossed it into the sink like it was contaminated. The silence that followed was suffocating. But I deserved it. I needed to sit in it. Drown in it, maybe. By morning, I was still on the floor, half asleep, fully hollow. Pale sunlight struggled through the stained blinds, illuminating nothing but the cheap carpet and the outline of my packed duffel bag. I had no idea what to do with it anymore. That's when I made a decision. Not out of strength, not even out of anger, but because I was too exhausted to keep letting her rewrite our story while I played the fool. I'd let her talk first. I'd hear what she had to say. But for once, I would decide what happened next. So I turned my phone back on. 43 unread messages, 2 missed calls, 1 voicemail. Her last text read, "I can explain." And in the voicemail, she didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't say, "It was a mistake." Instead, she delivered one venom-coated sentence that shattered the last sliver of hope I'd been clinging to. "I don't regret it." She said it calmly, clearly, like it was a casual remark about her coffee order, not a confession that she'd shattered our marriage and felt absolutely no remorse. I sat in that motel room, staring at the wall, as her voice looped in my head. I don't regret it. I don't regret it. I don't regret me. That's what she really meant. The truth hit harder than I ever imagined. I'd held on to this fantasy that maybe she'd gotten swept up in a moment of weakness, confusion, emotional chaos. Something I could rationalize if I just tried hard enough, But this wasn't confusion. This was clarity. Cold, calculated, unapologetic clarity. By noon, I was driving nowhere in particular. I just couldn't stay in that room any longer. Every stained corner reminded me of how small I'd become, how pathetic I'd felt. I drove past gas stations, fast food signs, and the little white church where we'd taken our wedding photos in front of the picket fence. She'd loved that place, said it reminded her of simpler times. I should have known then that she'd eventually outgrow me. I ended up at a quiet lake we used to visit before things between us started unraveling, before the distance, the half-truths, the fake smiles. I parked, stepped out, and watched the wind ripple across the water. For the first time all weekend, I cried. Not quietly, not politely. I sobbed like a man who'd carried someone else's silence for far too long. I probably looked unhinged to anyone passing by, but I didn't care. I'd held her secrets long enough. Now, it was time to release them. That night, I didn't go home. I booked a short-term rental apartment on the other side of town under a fake name. Nothing fancy, just clean, quiet, and secure, with locks only I controlled. I needed space, not just from her, but from the version of myself I'd become inside that marriage. The man who waited, who forgave too easily, who believed love meant sacrificing his own needs to make someone else feel free. I wasn't that man anymore, but she didn't know it yet. She still thought I was sitting at home, waiting for answers, for closure, for scraps of truth she might deign to offer. She had no idea I was already gone. 3 days passed before I let her hear from me. No calls, no replies. Nothing. I knew she'd spiral, and that's exactly what I needed. Not out of spite, but because I wanted her to sit with the same silence she'd tossed at me like it meant nothing. On the morning of the 4th day, I called her, just once. She answered on the second ring, breathless, like she'd been clutching the phone, waiting. "Elwood?" she said, using the nickname like we were still in some shared dream. "Where are you? Please, just talk to me." I didn't answer right away. Let her sit in the tension. Then, finally, "We should talk in person." She agreed before I finished the sentence. We met at the old diner on Birch Street, the same place where we'd had our first silly argument about what to name a dog we never got. She looked tired, nervous, overdressed for someone who claimed this whole thing meant nothing. I walked in wearing the same clothes I'd had on for days. I wanted her to see the weight of what she'd done. She tried to hug me when I sat down. I leaned back. That's when she started talking, not apologizing, but spinning some half-baked narrative about how it just happened, how she didn't plan to get physical, how it was about feeling alive again, not about replacing me. I didn't interrupt, didn't nod, just stared at the condensation on my water glass and waited for her to realize her words weren't landing. Then, as if testing me, she whispered, "I don't want to lose you, Elwood." That almost got me. Almost. But then she added, "We can rebuild. Just try to understand that I needed this." Needed this. Like she'd bought a new dress, not betrayed her husband. That's when I finally spoke. "You said you don't regret it. So why are you here?" She froze. Her face went pale. I watched the realization dawn. I wasn't here to fix things. I was here to show her what losing me actually looked like. "You thought I'd sit at home and wait for the storm to pass," I said. But I didn't. She looked confused. So I told her, "While you were gone, I made my own choice. And by the time you walked back in, I had already left." She stared at me for a long time. No tears, no shouting, just stunned silence. Like she couldn't process that the man who always forgave her had finally drawn a line. "What do you mean? You already left?" she asked, her voice smaller now, like she sensed the ground had vanished beneath her. I mean exactly what I said, I replied. You went on your little adventure, whatever you want to call it, while you were reconnecting with some guy who probably wears necklaces made of animal teeth. I packed a bag, turned off my phone, and decided I was done being the ghost in our marriage. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hands trembled as she reached for her water, but didn't drink, just held the glass like it was the only solid thing left. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. I almost laughed. You didn't trip and fall into his bed, Cora. You planned it. You labeled it on your calendar with emojis. That stung more than anything, because it was true, and she knew it. She'd tried to dress up betrayal as spiritual awakening, to make destruction sound poetic. I stood up. You don't have to follow me. In fact, please don't. But I left you something at the house. Her brow furrowed, confused again. I leaned in just enough so the waitress wouldn't hear. It's in the envelope taped to the fridge right where your note used to be. Then I walked out. No drama, no yelling, no begging her to chase after me. I just left her there in the booth where we'd once shared milkshakes and dreams, with her untouched water, her selfish regrets, and the dawning horror that something she thought was guaranteed wasn't. That night, I turned my phone off again. Didn't check her reaction. Didn't need to. But 2 days later, curiosity or weakness got the better of me. I powered it on. 24 missed calls, 7 voicemails, and 1 text that made my hands go numb. You changed the locks? Are you serious? I didn't reply, not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I knew exactly what she was doing. The shift was happening. Guilt was turning to anger. When she realized remorse wouldn't win me back, she'd rewrite the story, paint me as cold, unreasonable, the man who overreacted because his wife was just finding herself. Changing the locks wasn't revenge. It was protection. Emotional, physical, psychological. That house was no longer neutral ground. It had become a monument to every warning sign I'd ignored, and I wasn't about to hand her the keys to a place she'd already abandoned in her mind long ago. She called 3 more times, left a voicemail that began with, "You're being cruel," and ended with, "I didn't expect you to be so." Final. I almost laughed at that. Final. She'd packed a bag and spent an entire weekend in another man's bed. What did she think I'd do? Light candles and draw her a bath? Then silence. A full day with no messages. I thought maybe she'd finally accepted it, until the email came. Subject line: "Why would you do that to me?" I clicked, expecting another guilt trip. Instead, I read, "You left a box in the closet. A big one. I opened it. I don't even know what to say. You really planned this? How long have you been preparing to disappear?" She'd found it. It wasn't a revenge box. It wasn't even meant for her. It was something I'd been quietly assembling for years. Receipts, emails, screenshots, a secret bank account, backup drives, old texts. Every time my gut had whispered something's wrong over the past 2 years, and I'd ignored it, I'd documented it. Just in case I ever needed proof that I wasn't imagining things. The box wasn't to punish her. It was to protect me from forgetting, from gaslighting myself, from convincing myself it was all in my head. And now she knew. Her next message: "Did you ever love me? Or were you just waiting for this?" I stared at the blinking cursor for 5 full minutes. Then I typed 4 words and hit send. "You gave me reason." She didn't reply right away. And honestly, I didn't expect her to. I think deep down she finally understood. This wasn't about the box, the locks, or even the affair anymore. It was about the slow, quiet erosion of everything we'd built. While she was off chasing something new, I was rebuilding something old myself. The days that followed were oddly peaceful. I started sleeping through the night, stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, even went grocery shopping without wandering the aisles like a ghost. I finally got the dog we'd always talked about, but never committed to a scruffy mutt with floppy ears and soulful eyes. I named her Juno. She doesn't care that I talk too much. She just listens. And for now, that's enough. I moved into a small rental with big windows and a view of, well, nothing special. But I open the curtains every morning anyway. I've started writing again. Bad poetry, mostly. Stuff I'll probably never share. But I do it because it helps. Because I'm no longer pouring every ounce of myself into fixing what someone else was quietly walking away from. Cora texted me one last time. Just a simple line. I understand now. I wish I had sooner. I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness, but peace. She made her choice. And for once, so did I. So, if you're reading this, wondering whether to stay and fix it, or leave and fix yourself, here's what I've learned. You don't have to set yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm. Thanks for sticking with my story. If you've ever had a moment like this, where you realized too late wasn't actually too late, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your turning point. Your enough is enough moment.